अच्छा, आज का प्रोग्राम है डॉक्टर निक निगम का. He has been practicing cardiology for more than 30 years. He is the author of 4 books, including Heart Healthy Lifestyle, which is available for $10 to our members. He is an author, a professional speaker, writer, and people and media talk show host. He has given numerous presentations on heart healthy lifestyle. Please join your hands to welcome Dr. Nik Nikam.
Check. Can you all hear me? That's amazing. I could be screaming at the top of my voice at home and my 3 teenagers can't hear a word of what I say. Okay, it was 1980 and it was Pearland, Texas. I had just moved to Houston. I was giving a presentation to a senior citizens group just like this one. And I started off by saying that let's imagine for a moment that you are a proud owner of a thoroughbred racehorse worth in excess of $1 million. Your horse has already won 2 races and you are getting ready for the 3rd and final race, the Kentucky Derby, to snatch the Triple Crown. You're excited and the horse is ecstatic and you're waiting for that final pistol sound to get on the race. But let me pause here for a second and ask you, how many of you would let this horse smoke cigarettes, drink booze, and eat junk foods? Obviously not, because this is $1 million investment. So you're going to hire the best dietitian to make sure that the horse is fed the most balanced diet. You're going to hire the best exercise trainer in the country to make sure that the horse is maintained in an optimal condition. And you're going to make sure that the horse is not going to stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning just before the day of the race. But what about us? God gave us $1 billion body. Do we take care of our body as well as we take care of $1 million horse? That's why I told the senior citizens group there, I am going to give you a prescription for a heart healthy lifestyle. As soon as I said that, a 93 years young lady in the middle of the house, she stood up and she said, "Young man, I don't know what you're trying to tell. I am healthier than that creepy $1 million horse you're trying to sell us. And I don't need a prescription from a teenager like you. Why don't you go finish your medical school before you come and talk to folks like us?" As I was getting back home on the road, I realized maybe I was preaching to the wrong group. That was 1980 and this is 2016 and I'm standing in front of you and I'm feeling the same way. I have no idea what I'm supposed to be saying. I seriously. Because this group is no different from the group which I was addressing in 1980. First of all, I want to congratulate each and every one of you for having beaten all the odds of risk for heart disease and risk about quality of life. I know most of you speak Gujarati and I'm going to hire Himali to translate my speech into Gujarati when we put it on YouTube since I'm recording this one. So, okay. As I said, I won't be able to say it like I want to. Okay. Most of you have beaten the odds of this, not now, after, to beat the odds of heart disease. What I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on 5 major risk factors for heart disease. I'm going to give you just a simple overview and then open up for question and answers. Because most of you know what it is, most of you know what needs to be done, but is there something that we can do a little better? Is there something that we can understand a little better? That's what I'm going to be doing, and mostly I would like to spend the time in trying to answer your questions or concerns related to heart healthy lifestyle. The first major risk factor for a heart disease is being an Indian. You don't believe that, do you? No. Nobody ever, none of your doctors told you this risk factor?
Yes.
Okay, I'm the first one to tell you that being Indian or being from South Asia, be it India, Pakistan, Bangladesh or Sri Lanka, is the #1 risk factor for heart disease. The reason I say that is the average incidence of heart disease among the American population is 2.4 per 100,000 population. Whereas in the South Asian population, for 100,000 people, the incidence of heart disease is 9.6. We have 4 times the risk of heart disease compared to the entire world population. So that's why I congratulate each and every one of you for having beaten the first odd of getting heart disease at an earlier age or not making it through your 50s or 60s. So why is it that the Indian population has 4 times the risk of heart disease compared to the general population? There are many factors. Anyway, let's move on to the second major risk factor, which is #1 in the United States, and that is cholesterol. Cholesterol is the #1, or I should say #2 risk factor. The third risk factor is smoking. The fourth risk factor is diabetes. And the fifth one is hypertension. I have spent 35 plus years in cardiology, and I can spend the next 35 years talking about all these things. But what happened, I missed my breakfast in a rush to come here, so I'm looking forward for the lunch. So, okay, cholesterol is a #1 risk factor for heart disease. The total cholesterol should be less than 200 milligram%. There are various components of cholesterol. Let me tell you, we have the total cholesterol, then we have the LDL cholesterol, which is the bad cholesterol, then we have the HDL, or the high density lipoprotein, which is the good cholesterol, then we have the triglycerides. LDL is the bad cholesterol, which is deposited in the arteries, in the plaque, which builds up like a mount, and eventually it will block the artery, which leads to chest pain, heart attack, heart failure, and all the complications associated with that. On the other hand, the HDL, which is the good cholesterol, goes through the bloodstream, removes this bad cholesterol from the plaques, and returns it to the liver for further breakdown. The third thing which I mentioned was the triglycerides. Triglycerides are fatty particles which are found in the blood, which are the precursors for cholesterol, the good and bad cholesterol, and it is also an important component of the energy. Here's the important aspect about the cholesterol and our lifestyle. Yours and mine, because mine is probably, I eat twice as much as you do, so I'm the bigger culprit of all the people here. We are pretty heavy on carbohydrates. Majority of the carbohydrates, when they get into the blood, into the body, some of it is used for energy. Our body can store only about 400 grams of glycogen, which is a compound of carbohydrate, mostly in the muscles. And anything that we do not use as carbohydrates, that is absorbed into the bloodstream, is eventually converted into triglycerides and into fat. This nurse who said that all these beautiful sweets and all these things, 1 second on the lip and the rest of the life on the hips, like here, you don't like it and neither do I like it, but boy, those Indian sweets, especially Gujarati sweets, I can't I can't resist them. But we pay a high price for, taking all these actions. Same way, the carbohydrates also increase your blood sugar level and all this. So, how can we reduce the LDL cholesterol and how can we improve the HDL cholesterol? I'm just going to give you a bird's eye view of what can be done. As I said, I'll be more interested in answering your questions about particular concerns you may have. The best way to lower the LDL cholesterol is to reduce our total fat intake, because most of the fat contains your LDL cholesterol and also the different triglycerides and all these things. So by reducing the fat content, you can reduce the LDL cholesterol, and of course if it's beyond certain limit, then you may have to take pills like the statins to reduce your cholesterol. As far as the triglycerides are concerned, that's more to do with our everyday dietary habits, and if you can reduce your carbohydrate intake like the chapati, rice, potato, corn. What are we serving today? You heard them, they want all of it. So you multiply that with 4 of 3.5, that's the amount of calorie you are consuming for lunch, for breakfast, for dinner, for snacks, and for midnight everything. And beyond 200 milligrams of carbohydrates, everything else that you eat is going to be converted into triglycerides. So the best way to reduce your triglyceride levels is to cut your carbohydrates. Replace some of them with vegetables, some of them with like protein, egg protein or fish, whatever it is. Or sometimes you can reduce with eating that are not carbohydrates. So that's in a nutshell about carbohydrates, and we'll get to question answers later on. The third thing is smoking. Does anybody have a cigarette pack here for demonstration? Maybe you can borrow it from your neighbors and give it so you don't have to announce that you have a cigarette pack. Even now I see when I go to parties, people standing outside and jollily smoking. Smoking is the number 2 risk factor for heart disease. Smoking increases the risk of heart disease by 100%. And the good thing about smoking is that if you stop smoking at the end of 1 year after smoking cessation, the risk of heart disease comes down to that of a normal person. But the damage that is done to the lungs, such as emphysema, COPD, or chronic bronchitis, those things are irreversible. Not to mention the nicotine addiction and also all the 8,000 chemicals that are in the cigarettes. But you know, thanks to all the lawyers who made billions of dollars in trying to shut down the tobacco industry, at least in this country, the smoking has been to a large extent cut down, especially in public buildings. But I think smoking is something that we as Indians had to take it very seriously, because as I said, you're already the #1 risk candidate for heart disease, even if you don't have any other risk factors for that matter. And talking about Indians, the risk factor applies the same numbers whether you're a vegetarian, non-vegetarian, eggetarian, fisharian, or I don't know how many other new terms they have coined in the last few years. So all of these things make an important role. And smoking cessation will definitely help to reduce the risk of heart disease. So that's, what's the other one? I think I forgot.
Diabetes.
Huh?
Diabetes.
Diabetes. Thanks for reminding me, because you know, they say as you get older, there are 3 things in a sequence you lose. First one is, of course, the memory. Dad. Huh? I know, maybe after lunch I may feel better. Okay, let's talk about diabetes. Again, bad news. Indians have the highest incidence of diabetes compared to most other population groups. Except for maybe 1 or 2 other countries, I don't remember that. But almost 50% of the adult Indian population either has pre-diabetes or evidence of full-blown diabetes. And all of this has to do to a certain degree with genetic factors, and especially our diet, and most certainly our dessert. Are we serving dessert today? Okay. I just wanted to connect all the dots so that people understand. So, and our desires, so we are sort of killing ourselves from inside. That's what we. So, talking about diabetes. Question? Oh, okay. We'll get to the questions in a few minutes. Okay, talking about diabetes. Unfortunately, diabetes is not just a sugar problem. You go and see an endocrinologist, they're going to manage your sugar and things like that. But as a cardiologist, I have seen the whole spectrum of complications related to diabetes, from cerebrovascular stroke to heart disease, carotid artery disease, peripheral arterial disease, kidney problems, renal artery stenosis, and metabolic problems leading to microvascular changes and all these things. And all of these things are related to diabetes. So diabetes is just not one independent sugar problem. You take sugar pill and you're going to be cured. No, I think we have to go way beyond that. In order to control diabetes, there are many things that we seriously need to take into account. One is to control our carbohydrate intake only to the extent that your body needs carbohydrates to maintain your adequate blood sugar. Because if you don't take enough carbohydrates, your sugar is going to drop. So you need to maintain. Number two, we need to maintain ideal body weight. Number three, exercise. When you exercise, your body uses fat for energy as opposed to using sugar. And it also burns sugar initially, and that brings down your blood sugar level. And maintaining ideal body weight is another thing that will help you. And patients with diabetes are already supposed to have the same risk as a patient with a heart disease. It's kind of crazy. The risk factors are just piling up. I don't think you wanted to hear this from me today, especially before lunch. So when you have diabetes, you're already considered as a risk candidate for heart disease. When you have diabetes, there are a lot of things that the numbers we use don't apply, because if you have diabetes, your LDL cholesterol should be not 100, it should be 80 or below. The good cholesterol, which is another genetic problem among Asian population, South Asian population, the HDL in this country should be around 40 or more, but most of the Indians, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, and Sri Lankans, all our HDLs are between 20 and 30. I don't know why God created that way, but that's what it is. And there are not a whole lot of things that can increase your HDL except diet control and exercise. Exercise is the only thing that increases your HDL level. And with diabetes, as I told you, we get these vascular problems also. And if you add smoking to diabetes, the vascular problems almost multiplies significantly. So it's very important, especially if you have diabetes, to have a multi-pronged approach to dealing with this so that you can not only live but have a better quality of life. Okay, after diabetes, obesity is also an independent risk factor for a heart disease, because obesity increases glucose intolerance, it also increases hypertension, it also increases cholesterol levels, and all of these things added together, they increase the risk for heart disease. Okay, what I would like to do is, I'd like to just stop here and ask if you have any questions, so then I can answer some of the questions, and in this process maybe try to explain in more detail about that particular issue. Yes sir, let's start off.
You said HDL is good. How good it is if somebody has 100?
That's a very good point. I think those people who have an HDL level of 100 have the lowest incidence of heart disease. And in fact, there was some research done to see if we can harvest this HDL or HDL genes in the populations where they run pretty high HDL levels, and see if we can infuse them into people in the blood to improve the HDL level. Some couple of preliminary studies were done, but not a whole lot of research has been done to see if we can actually use this information genetically to treat people with very high risk for heart disease, those people who have diabetes, hypertension, heart surgery, stents and all these things. But I don't think we've gone too far in understanding how we can improve the HDL. As I said, exercise is one thing that improves the HDL level, and of course the statins also increase the HDL level, but more importantly the statins can drop your LDL level by at least 40 to 50%, and that's one thing that helps, especially if we have multiple risk factors. Yes sir? Oh okay, here, go ahead please.
In relation to diabetes,
Yes.
and hypertension, what effect the food, say, oatmeal does and how it affects?
Oh, okay, oatmeal is supposed to be better compared to the regular other types of carbohydrates like white rice or chapati or wheat. And oatmeal raises the blood sugar level gradually. It's called the glycemic index. That's the rate at which the blood sugar goes up when we eat carbohydrates. Supposing you take a tablet of glucose, which is pure glucose, and you take that one, they measure the time, how long it takes for the blood sugar to go up to a certain level, and then you take something like oatmeal, or is something like chickpeas, which also has carbohydrates, the blood sugar level rise is gradual, and that's the one we want. That's why they say when you have diabetes, you need to eat lots of salads and non-carbohydrates, so that even the carbohydrates you are taking needs to be slowly absorbed, so you are not taxing your pancreas to produce insulin. These sudden spikes in insulin is what is bad, because every time there's more insulin released, there's more carbohydrate converted into triglycerides, and it's deposited in the body, and most of it is permanent when it's deposited. Okay, yes sir?
What are the side effects of statin? People tell all different sorts of things.
I think the first side effect of statins is $240 if you don't have a prescription plan. It is, because one of my patients told me that's how much cost it is. So that's number one. Let me finish this one. And I think for the majority of the people, statins are pretty well tolerated. I've been prescribing for more than 30 years. I don't see a whole lot of complications. Initially they said we need to monitor the liver functions because it can affect the liver, and the liver enzymes can go up. We do it every 6 months. But other than that, there is a small percentage, maybe less than 1 to 2%, who can develop muscle weakness due to muscle tissue damage, which is called myopathy. And some people say that if you take CoQ10 along with the statins, it may improve the muscle function a little bit. If somebody comes with muscle weakness, which is the main side effect of statins, I would either tell them to take half the dose and see if it helps, or take the medicine every other day, and also take CoQ10 100 to 150 milligrams along with that. If it can help, it's fine. If it doesn't help, we may have to switch over to non-statin drugs like Festran or something, which is not very easy and pleasant to take. Okay, please. Yeah, yes, please. Okay, we are going to the realm of omega-3 fatty acids. In fact, I have a whole chapter in this particular, I didn't show you the book. This is the book I have written, which is $19.20 plus tax, title, and license. They're going to give it to you for $10 and finish, and part of that will go to your Senior Citizens Association. Okay, having did the sales speech for this, there are chapters on carbohydrates, proteins, omega-3 fatty acids, exercise, diet, meditation, relaxation. Everything is covered. So, okay, coming back to your question, omega-3 fatty acids have been shown to reduce the LDL cholesterol level. That's why the nuts are pretty high in omega-3 or polyunsaturated fatty acids, and that helps to lower your cholesterol. An ounce of nuts won't really hurt you a whole lot, but at the same time you have to realize you are getting fats. Nuts, 70% of their calories come from fat. So it's going to add some fat, and if you are already modest on other fat intake, nuts are a good way to get omega-3, especially walnut and almond and maybe some degree peanuts. So, okay, yes sir.
Taking baby aspirin along with statin, what's the plus or minus?
Okay, practically I would say all of my patients are on baby aspirin along with statins, and most of the time we recommend 81 milligrams of aspirin for adults over 50 years of age. And there are some studies which show that all we need is 40 milligrams of aspirin to get the anti-platelet effect on these blood platelets. But as we get older, the absorption is not predictable. So that's why some people say that you take 1 or maybe 2 baby aspirins to make sure that you have adequate amount of aspirin available, which can act on the platelets. An important thing about aspirin is once the aspirin acts on the platelets, the action is permanent, and until those platelets die, they cannot function in terms of creating blood clot. This is important if you're going for an immediate surgery or a procedure like colonoscopy, something like that. You should routinely stop your aspirin and any other blood thinners for at least 4 to 5 days before the procedure, because even aspirin can cause a lot of havoc if you're going for a dental extraction or something like that. Yes, please.
I wanted to ask you this week or but why servants are all barbs are really infected? It's a genetic.
That's a very good question, and I do ultrasound. I do ultrasound tests.
What's the question?
Okay, the question was, why do the heart valves begin to leak as we get older, or as we get younger? I do ultrasounds. I sit there and watch the heart valves of 18, 20-year-old people, 30-year-old, 40-year-old, 50-year-old person. Invariably, when people are in their 6th and 7th decades, I see a lot of their valves are having leak, and especially the aortic valve is sort of thick, calcified, and in some cases it is narrow. So basically it is just showing the wear and tear of a human body. I mean, we see wear and tear or stress, fractures on aeroplanes which are only 20 years old. And let's imagine God created our body in such excellent manner. Even after 80 years, all we're seeing is a little bit leak in a mitral valve or an aortic valve. And you imagine having the same valve in an oil industry that can last 70 or 80 years. So I think our body is marvelous. Heart is one of the most fascinating organs created by God. In fact, I wrote an article on heart, the greatest engineering marvel in the universe, because our heart involves every branches of modern day engineering, from structural engineering, from fluid dynamics, from electrical engineering, from artificial intelligence, software. I mean, I can go on and on. I have written this article. If you want, I can get you a copy of this. Okay, let's get to the questions. Okay, yes, sir.
What is the number for the non-diabetic person? Suppose we take the blood test in morning. What is the number? So their people have no diabetic.
Blood pressure?
No, blood.
Diabetic. A1C, okay. Hemoglobin A1C is a reflection of where your sugars have been in the past 30 days. Different labs have different references, but from the American Diabetic Association, if somebody has a full-blown diabetes, they would like to see that the endocrinologist who is treating these patients, the majority of these patients' hemoglobin is below 7.0. This is how they judge how good the endocrinologist has been in treating his population for diabetes, in managing their blood sugar and also bringing down their hemoglobin A1C. By bringing down the hemoglobin A1C, they have been able to correlate with lesser complications, as compared to those people who are running around with hemoglobin A1C of 8, 9 or 10. So the ideal goal is to keep it below 7 if you have diabetes, but if you don't have diabetes, you certainly don't want to get there under any circumstances, and maybe keep it more close to like 6 or below 6.5. And most of us who don't have diabetes, we fall in this range where our hemoglobin A1Cs, let's face it, it's all based on our diet and our genetics. So we're going to have 6 and 6.5. That's where we have to really struggle to make sure that we cut down on our carbohydrates and start exercising a little more and add some vegetables to keep that hemoglobin A1C below 6.2, 3, I mean, depending on what the lab reference is. Okay, next question. Yes, please. Okay, if your HDL level is say like 60 or 70, and the LDL level is like 100 or so, you have already achieved the purpose of a statin treatment as such. But I'm not going to stop right there and say, okay, it's fine, you don't need anything, but I'm going to look at the whole picture.
I am talking about the blood sugar number. When we have a machine, we take the blood test. What is the number is there showing that it is a non-diabetic person?
Okay, I'll come back to that. I'll come back and complete that answer. Okay, where were we? See, again, this memory stuff is... Okay, if the HDL is higher, then I look at all other factors. If there's a strong family history, if that person has diabetes, and if that person has high blood pressure, then we see how best we can optimize all the treatment to keep you away from heart doctors. Okay, coming back to your blood sugar, I think normally the blood sugar should be like, a fasting blood sugar should be less than 95 to 100 milligram percent, and a 2-hour sugar should be less than like 140. I'm not a diabetes specialist, but that's the guideline that the American Diabetic Association recommends. Okay, next question. Yes, sir. That's a good question. And if you have a leaky valve, generally the leak is small. If the heart function is normal, most people have very limited symptoms. But on the other hand, if somebody has a severe leak in, say, for example, a mitral valve, then they develop heart failure, the heart enlarges, they develop weakness, shortness of breath, swelling in the legs, tiredness, and all of these symptoms can get worse with time. This is diagnosed by using an ultrasound test, and if it's extremely leaky, if it's something can be fixed by repairing the mitral valve or replacing the mitral valve, that's something that needs to be evaluated through special ultrasound tests and perhaps cardiac catheterization. Okay. One more.
Endocrine takes the stress test. So how often we should go to endocrine for it, or we should be going to heart specialist for stress test?
Oh, stress test? I think the stress test has to be done by a cardiologist.
And the endocrine people doing it.
There are a lot of people who are doing too many things that are supposed to be doing in cardiology. For example, primary doctors are doing echocardiograms, primary doctors are doing nuclear stress tests. If they don't know what to do with the results, given in an individual patient with all their medical problems that are existing, then it's a waste of time and money. If somebody is doing that, I would say, just find another doctor, seriously, because if you need brain surgery, you want to go to a neurosurgeon, you don't want to go to a barber. So I'm not saying I'm smarter, but as I told you, like when she asked about the high HDL, because I'm not going to stop right there, because I want to look at the whole spectrum. I had people who are less than 100 pounds had heart surgery. So there are a lot of things which interact with an individual, and we look at all these multifactorial elements and see what is optimal for that. Let me explain about this nuclear stress test. Nuclear stress test is a very complex test. It's a very simple test to do, especially chemical stress test. It takes a couple of minutes to do it. But we have to know the difference between a normal area. We have to know the difference between high heart function or depressed heart function. Then we have to know the entire cardiac history. Did this patient have a heart attack? Does this patient have heart failure? And what are the symptoms? And we should know what the electrocardiogram looks like. And the endocrinologist doesn't have access to all these things. So it doesn't make sense for an endocrinologist to do a nuclear test and give you a meaningful answer as to what needs to be done. I see nuclear tests on almost every daily basis to clear a patient for a surgery. Patients going for colon surgery, patients going for gallbladder surgery. When I have to look at the patient from a global perspective and see, okay, your risk of going for surgery and dying on the operating table is less or is too high, I don't know if your endocrinologist can answer that question. Okay, next question. Yes, please. I think that's a very good question. I think most of the people do recommend. Okay, the question is, well, when a patient has a heart surgery, the doctors generally recommend them to continue with aspirin and Plavix. That is still the general recommendation. You know, anybody who has a cardiac problem or who is at a high risk for heart disease needs to be on aspirin no matter. As far as continuing Plavix, because the vein grafts are also prone for formation of blood clot and some plaque building, the general recommendation is to stay on Plavix long term. We don't know how long, but that's the general recommendation. So I would say, you know, if we are not having any serious problems with the medications other than the cost, then I think now Plavix is available as a generic form, so it should be okay. Next question. Yes, please.
Is it available to take bariatric antigen of 50 plus?
Yeah, I would recommend it from a theoretical aspect, but if you're 50 plus, I would say at least you see a family doctor so they can get an electrocardiogram, they can check your blood count, check your cholesterol level, check your hemoglobin A1C, check your thyroid level. All the blood tests takes 1 minute. I draw blood in, I'm like a country doctor, I draw blood in my office myself. And we send it. So when we see, my approach is global approach again. That's why I look at the entire picture and see what is the best approach for one given individual based on all their numbers and findings. Yes, please.
Side effects of aspirin besides the blood thinning on the stomach.
Aspirin has been pretty well tolerated by, I would say, more than 98% of the people I have come across. There are some people who absolutely cannot take aspirin. In that case, Plavix may be the only alternative left to have antiplatelet activity on the blood. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What are the side effects of statin drugs and how to deal with them?
Okay, he was asking about the side effects of the statin drugs. We already talked about this. The only major side effects of statin drugs I have come across in my practice is related to some muscle weakness, which is not very common, maybe 1 to 3% or so. And for them, reducing the dosage is one option. The second option is to try enzyme CoQ10, which is part of the Krebs cycle enzyme, and it's like 100 to 150 milligrams daily, or you can take statins every other day and see if it works. If nothing else works, then there are other options like taking fish oil or Questran, which is a non-statin drug, and also there are Tricor, which is the one which lowers the triglyceride level, and some of these may help to reduce the level of total cholesterol. Yes, please.
Where's your office?
I'm in Sugar Land, Texas, right next to the Methodist Hospital on Sweetwater Boulevard and 59. Yes, please. Okay, the triglyceride numbers should be 150 or less, but as soon as we eat, it can go up to 300-400 milligram%. And triglycerides have also been found to be an independent risk factor among women. And especially if you have diabetes, it becomes an independent risk factor for heart disease. that's why I said we have to have a global approach, a multifactorial approach to dealing with heart disease, diabetes, hypertension, because these are all what we call chronic degenerative diseases. They are all interrelated, because what's happening with one system is probably the same mechanism that's happening in other systems. So by approaching all of this from all different angles, we can at least lead a better quality of life. Yes, sir?
You mentioned about thyroid.
Yes.
What is the function, what is the impact of thyroid on heart?
Okay, thyroid is an interesting hormone, and especially Indians, I don't know for what reason, majority of the, and it's more so among ladies, by the time they are 30, their thyroid levels are low, and most of them are on thyroid replacement. There are two ways thyroid affects the heart. If the thyroid hormone is really hyperactive, it increases the metabolism, it increases the heart rate, it increases the heart function, and it can also damage the heart muscle cells. So they can develop thyroid toxicosis, which can lead to accelerated hypertension and even heart failure. On the other hand, if your thyroid hormone is low, it can lead to deposition of these proteins in the heart muscle or fluid around the heart, which leads to sluggish body function and also sluggish heart function. And the hypothyroidism is much easier to treat. You just take Levoxil or any other thyroid supplement. In that way, you can correct that part. If you're hyperthyroid, I just saw a young lady who is hyperthyroid. She had to go through radioactive treatment because her heart rate was 120 and she was having all this flushing, all these other symptoms. Okay. Question? Yes, please. Yes.
What is the calcium test?
Oh, which one?
Calcium.
Oh, CAT scan. Okay, CAT scan is one way to find out this incidence of, if there's any evidence of a heart disease. And they say that as we get older, as we develop blockages, there's deposition of calcium in the coronary arteries. And when we do a CAT scan, the CAT scan can pick up the calcium, and they call it as the calcium score. If the calcium score of the coronary arteries is less than 100, the chances of having a heart disease are much less. If the calcium score is more than 400, then the risk of heart disease goes up significantly. And there are some studies, those people who are trying to sell these machines, they say by dietary alterations and things like that, you can bring down the calcium score and all this. I'm not really convinced at this time that these things can happen. But it would help you, but it will only signal that there may be some problem. In order to really find out, do you have a critical blockage in the artery that can possibly give a heart attack today or in the next 3 months or 6 months? The most important tests are electrocardiogram and a nuclear stress test or cardiac catheterization. If the nuclear stress test is completely normal, it is telling us that if there is any degree of blockage in the artery, it has to be less than 70%. So that's, in a nutshell, it helps. That's how we determine whether somebody is safe enough to have surgery or procedures. Oh, okay. Let's see, where is, we have time? Huh? Oh, okay. Oh, more questions. Okay, let's give some.
The heart murmur affect the body very
Okay, anytime there is turbulence to the flow of blood, we get heart murmur. And we get turbulence to the flow of blood when there is narrowing of the heart valve, or when the heart is very dilated, or if the valves are very loose and relaxed. That means either we get stenosis or regurgitation. And sometimes with just hypertension, because of the increased flow and velocity, we get heart murmurs. The best way to determine whether this murmur is innocent or whether this has any significance would be to do the echocardiogram, and then we can actually see where the leak is, how significant the leak is, what is causing the leak, and how do we treat it? Do we treat it with medications, or is this some condition that needs valve surgery? In fact, I have sent people for aortic valve replacement just based on the echocardiogram. Okay, let's see. Go ahead, please.
I understand you referred to the Q10 with statin. Is it replaced?
No, CoQ10 just replaces. When people are taking statins, it is believed that the CoQ10 enzymes are somehow depleted or blocked in the Krebs cycle, where the energy production for the muscles. And by taking this extra CoQ10, it would replace the CoQ10 that was lost in the process of metabolism. There is really no good explanation as to how it helps, but if it helps in your case, it's worth it. If it doesn't help, then we have to look at other alternatives. Next. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I think the stress tests today are so accurate, whether you do a treadmill test or you do a chemical stress test and you compare the results, they are pretty much identical. So what I do is, for the most part, I have them come prepared for the chemical stress test, and if I see they are physically fit, while they are lying down, I ask them to exercise their arms and legs while we do the chemical stress test. So I get a combination of both exercise and the chemical stress test. So we get very, very good results because we have correlated that with cardiac catheterizations to see the results we saw correlated with the degree of stenosis in the coronary arteries during the cardiac catheterization. I'm a little surprised because when she was asking questions, only ladies were raising hands. When I'm asking questions, most of the questions are coming from men. Yes, that's a whole new chapter. I think you may have invited me back again to talk about heart disease among women. In fact, I have 2 videos on YouTube on my channel, which is NNN Media. And you can go and watch those. Really, I think it's a long thing to explain. But there are 2 excellent videos about women and heart disease. So I just talk specifically about what are the issues that relate to women and heart disease and how to manage those things. The symptoms are totally unreliable. And we have seen people drop dead after seeing a cardiologist. Sorry, it happens to cardiologists too. And we have seen people who are 88, 90 years old who have beaten all the odds. And the only way we can really say whether somebody has a heart disease and how significant the heart disease is going to be determined by objective findings like listening to the heart, listening to the heart sounds, the valve sounds, or the murmurs, then looking at the EKG for evidence of old heart attack or cardiac enlargement, looking at the chest X-ray to look at the heart size, the lung congestion, things like that, on the ultrasound test. These are the things which will give us concrete evidence as to does somebody have a heart problem, how significant is a heart problem, what kind of heart problem they have, and then we can determine what the risk of having further cardiovascular events in due course. Yes, sir. Yes. Yes, yes.
Because I saw in the advertisement there are some lawyers here ready to find.
Yeah. Okay. Xeralta and commercials. I have seen those commercials. I mean, I just close my eyes and or take a little refrigerator break. You know what I mean by that. Let me finish this Xeralta stuff. Okay. All medications have side effects. The effects related to Xeralta are sometimes overblown, and doing studies in more than 100,000 people comparing it to coumadin or warfarin, they have shown the incidence of bleeding complications are no bigger than what we see in the conventional blood thinners. Nobody is going to sue coumadin or warfarin. It's like fighting a war where you don't know who your enemy is. Xarelto has deep pockets. It's a prescription drug, so the lawyers know they can make some money, so they're going to do it. And everybody asked me the same question. I said, well, you are going to need a blood thinner. If you have atrial fibrillation, you're going to need a blood thinner. Why should I need a blood thinner? Okay, let me give you an example. If you are 65 years old, you have atrial fibrillation, if you have hypertension, if you have heart disease, and your chances of getting stroke are going to be reduced by 50%. Do you want to take the Xarelto or do you want to skip it? You know, every time we take a medicine, especially some of these dangerous medicines, we have to weigh the advantages over disadvantages or drawbacks. It's not, I mean, this is an emotional question, and that's how I explain to them. You know, you have a 10% risk of getting a stroke in the next year. That opens up our eyes and mind and say, okay, do I want the risk of having a stroke 10% in 1 year, or should I just take this pill and take a chance? No, that is not to undermine. There are people who had intracerebral bleeding from Xarelto and who have died. There are rare instances, but when you put all the statistics together, I think there's not much evidence. Of course, the lawyers are going to make money out of those people who had stroke and died and all these things. That's the nature of medicine in this country. Questions? Any more questions? Yes, please. I think, like I answered the other young lady, I'm going to look at the whole total picture of that particular person. Their weight, their blood sugar, their blood pressure, the genetic factor, and when I put all these things together, then I will assess as to, what is the risk of this person having a heart disease. If it's low, then we probably don't need. You also have to understand, when the total cholesterol is 260, it has the LDL, HDL, and triglycerides. Triglycerides are the most variable number among all these three, because as I said, if you have a heavy meal, it can go up 50 points. So if it's a fasting blood test, and if it shows these numbers, still I look at all the other evidence and then decide, what should we do? Maybe we need a small dose of medication to bring down the total cholesterol, not necessarily the HDL. Any more questions? Yes. That's a good question. So we are going to a whole different topic. Legs, there are two things that we need to be concerned about legs. When we have heavy legs, that's a heavy loaded question. Number one, you may have heavy legs because of poor circulation in the arteries, which is a major problem among diabetics and hypertensives. And the second part is, if you're having heavy legs, it could be a sign of heart failure, fluid retention, and also venous problems. So all of these things need to be looked into, and the best way to look at is with the Doppler test, which can look at both veins and arteries to see whether this is arterial problem or whether this is a venous problem. Based on that, then we can decide if we need angiograms to see if there's any blockage in the arteries or veins. You need both arterial and venous? Yeah. Okay, yes, please.
Is it hereditary to have heart problems? It asks you if your parents had it or your siblings.
Yes. I think there are certain families where people have a tendency to have heart disease, and it's not uncommon to see these people having heart attacks at a much earlier age. Let me give you an analogy. If you have no risk factors at all, and assuming you're not Indian, at least for this discussion, the risk of having heart disease may be at age 70. For every risk factor you add, like cholesterol, it will drop to 60, cigarette 50, diabetes 30, 40. That's why people with diabetes get heart attacks when they're in their 25, 30 or 40 years. So every major risk factor we add, the risk of heart disease development comes down by 10 years. On the other hand, if you modify all these risk factors, then we can look at a better quality of life and hopefully maybe live longer. Yes, sir.
So what is the difference between the diabetes type 1 and diabetes type 2?
Diabetes type 1 is called congenital diabetes due to congenital lack of insulin production, and that is seen mostly in young population. Diabetes 2 is mostly related to the adult lifestyle. It's more related to reduced production of insulin, and that's seen mostly in adults, which is generally managed with pills, diet, exercise and all this. Whereas in type 1 diabetes, they all need to be on insulin because the body is not producing insulin at all. Yes, please.
You talked about the food and cholesterol and all these things related to heart. How about the stress and tension?
Stress?
Yeah.
Well, the stress plays a significant role in everyday life, and it can also amplify our cardiovascular system. And that's why I have a multi-system approach in every case to deal with cardiac problems. Even though I'm a cardiologist, I just don't look at heart. I look at the lungs, kidneys, vascular problems, their mental status, all of this, and we make recommendations as to the best way they can live, not only just keeping the numbers good, but the quality of life, which is the most important thing at the end of the day. Yes, please.
The effect of the heart, that is heart attack. True that we get also some pain, which disappears without reason and becomes intolerant. And it disappears with heart attack.
I mean, there are a lot of studies which bring out one point or the other, but from a practical point of view, I can say the symptoms, for the most part, are reliable, but some rare symptoms not reliable, because we have seen people who have been scheduled for gallbladder surgery, and they have called the cardiologist to clear the patient while being rolled into the operating room to clear for heart, only to say, okay, this patient is having a heart attack, you need to hold off your gallbladder surgery, so let's put him in the ICU and take care of his heart first, or her heart first. So the symptoms are not very reliable. That's why I said we have to take the entire global assessment and see, the main thing is, does this person have a heart disease? What is the risk of having a heart attack? How critical is a heart problem? And how do we manage this? And how we reduce the risk factors in the long term so that hopefully we can prevent these complications so that you can live a functional, better quality of life while still having a heart disease or any other medical problem. Yes, please.
Your books are gone over here.
Okay, what I would suggest is, Ramesh, you can give all of you who want book, just give your names. He will come to my office and pick up the books and distribute. How many people want book? Can I see a show of hands, please? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, you just give him the names and he will come to my office in Sugarland. Then they can pick up the copies of the books. Okay, yes, sir. We got one more question, and after that, you all can have your lunch. And if you're still not satisfied with the lunch, you can have more questions. I'll be here for the next couple of hours to answer any questions you may have. Yes, please. Yes, sir.
One question.
Yes.
ऐसे बोलते हैं कि लेडीज को कम हार्ट अटैक आता है और पुरुष को ज्यादा आता है। क्यों? ऐसे मैंने पढ़ा था कि लेडीज शॉपिंग करती है तो सेलिब्रिटी हो जाती है और पुरुष बिल भरते हैं उसको अटैक आता है। अच्छा।
जब औरत आराम से जाके शॉपिंग करते हैं वो खुशी रहते हैं, इसके लिए उसका हार्ट अटैक कम होते हैं। जब आदमी बिल देखता है क्रेडिट कार्ड का, वैसे ही ब्लड प्रेशर बढ़ जाता है, छाती में दर्द आता है और बुलाता है एम्बुलेंस को बुलाओ। ऑलराइट, थैंक यू लेडीज एंड जेंटलमैन, लेट्स हैव लंच।
थैंक यू डॉक्टर निक निकम। आपको आज का प्रोग्राम कैसा लगा? इंफॉर्मेटिव।